I'm very excited today to have the federal and regional perspectives on the entrepreneurship scene in Germany. So we have with us here today Barbara Dio, who's the Chief Partnership Officer for the federal level Agentur für Sprunginnovation. We have here on the left Stefan Schulz, who is an entrepreneur since age 16, basically, right? CEO of Fabnomics GmbH, which started in Erfurt. And we have Yves Israel, who's the investment manager for BNP Ventures AG, which focuses on Sachsen-Anhalt and also has offices in Berlin. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to ask each of them an initial question, and then I'm going to throw questions out there for debate and discussion, and the audience can also participate by sending questions via slido.com, hashtag 034878, so feel free to ask any questions you would like and to address specific panelists as well. So we're going to start with Barbara. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, Barbara, can you tell us a little bit about this Federal Agency for Innovation? How did that come about?
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I love the title Startup Safari, and I think that's probably the reason why I dressed up as a zebra this morning. There was probably some unconscious factors at play, but anyway. So thank you very much. Happy to be here and to represent the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation called Sprint. I think you had our founding director, Rafael Laguna, last year giving the opening keynote. So it's a pleasure to be back and to reconnect. Sprint came about really, is very much the new kid on the innovation block in Germany. So we're not yet very well known, I think, across the board. So that's also part of my role as being in charge of partnerships and connections nationally and internationally to the research environment, to the innovation community, to the investment community. So if you want to learn more, just ping me. Why was it deemed necessary to have an agency like this? So I think the observation is that our nation's wealth is still very much resting on the laurels of innovations and technical breakthroughs that were made 100 years ago in the pharmaceutical industry, in the chemical industry, in the automobile industry. And ever since then, obviously, we had 2 world wars in the last century, and then we had the economic miracle in the 1950s, and so on and so forth. Things were going seemingly swimmingly, but I think we are kind of running out of steam, and I think there is a new necessity for looking at innovations that are very much, that need time to mature, that will not, let's say, disrupt the world tomorrow, but that they need to be looked at and need to be funded at an early stage and literally through public money, because these are technologies and innovations that are still very much in their infancy, which probably no private investor would yet touch because their potential is still somewhat unvalidated. And so that's really our job. Our job is to scout these innovations, to scout these technologies, mostly in the kind of deep tech arenas, in the labs, in the research parks, wherever they may be hiding, or maybe sometimes in the heads of just some really innovative people. And find them, develop them, and hopefully then bring them to a level where we may be able to hand them over to other players, to really commercial investors, and really make them big and have them create value, socioeconomic value. So that's the reason for us being funded.
Thank you, Barbara. And you are based in Leipzig, correct?
Yes, so when we were looking for a home, or when the decision was made where this new agency should have its base, they decided on Leipzig, so which is great. I mean, Leipzig is boomtown. I'm personally still based in Berlin, but we have a crew here of about 9 people who are based here permanently. The rest of the team is dispersed across Germany. I mean, we are a federal agency, so in some way we have to also be accessible. But I'm always struck, like by the vibe that I feel here around town. I mean, it's a can-do. It's as I said, it's boomtown. I think it's wonderful. And actually, if we're looking at the project statistics, Leipzig is actually on place 4 of all states in Germany in terms of project submissions so far. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbara.
Get to place 1.
Okay, so now we move on to Stefan, to the entrepreneur's perspective. Stefan, can you tell me a little bit about your path as an entrepreneur and why you decided to start your business in Erfurt in the first place?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here, hosting me. Yeah, the history is quite long. I've been active as an entrepreneur since quite many years. Always been active in the mechanical engineering, electronics engineering, IT business. And after starting in Jena in 2008, where I founded one of my first companies, I decided to move to Erfurt. And we've been over there for a couple of years, and one of my companies is still active over there. And by the beginning of this year, actually, we decided to move our software development over here to Leipzig. Because, as it just was said, the spirit over here in this city is really impressive. It's very open-minded, looking straight forward, and you have a huge international base of potential employees, and it's really great fun to actually set up a team and work together with the people. And if you have lunch with the guys from Basislager, it's really cool, because whenever you are there, you're meeting people from virtually all countries of the world, and I really enjoy the whole thing. It's really great.
Thank you, Stefan. I think Basislager should really be acknowledged for its contributions to the local startup and larger entrepreneurial scene as well, as a pioneer in the co-working spaces here in Leipzig. Now we talk to Yves. Yves will give us the investor's perspective. I wanted to know from you, Yves, what do you look for in companies that you would like to invest in? What is the profile that you're looking for?
Well, at first we are a company based in Berlin and Magdeburg, and we also have a fixed desk in a co-working space in Halle. So at the moment our main subject is to manage the venture capital funds of the state of Sachsen-Anhalt. So it's probably one of quite interesting thing where a private company is managing state funds. So this is probably one of the, I think, positive points we have here. And due to the fact that we are working mainly in Saxony-Anhalt, well, we are looking for people, at least. So people. We invest in people, we invest in the ideas, but finding the right people to be a startup, to be a founder, is probably the most difficult thing to find. So you find sometimes really good ideas, but it's not always the case that the people are matching the idea. So it's a hard fact to find, but I think we are quite good in it. So that's why, from the perspective of an investment company, the regional aspect is of a high value for us, to see the different people. It's not going to Leipzig or to Berlin, so we see the comparison to Berlin, of course, because our base is there, but you have a lot of high potentials also in the regions that are beyond the horizon for some of the hotspots, I would say.
So really quick, I wanted to ask you, can a founder write to you and say, I would like to be mentored on, what sorts of business I can open, what the market demands are here?
So we are not a consulting company, so we're not doing the coaching, but it's probably in every state the same. You have many stately or funded companies who are helping you to get your business plans and stuff like this in the right place. So for Saxony-Anhalt would be Univations based in Halle. So they're doing a really great job improving the ideas, improving the business plans, and helping the founders to the next step in finding a investment in the first place.
Thank you, Yves. Now we have a question for Barbara specifically. How to get involved with Sprint as a university student with nothing more than ideas and dedication?
Well, I love the question, thank you. Well, I mean, we have tons of people, not tons of people, but we have quite a few students who apply to us to help out at trainees. So if you are interested in doing that, and if you have maybe a specific area of expertise that you would like to develop, so yeah, just send us an application and we'll look at it.
Thank you, Barbara. That's an exciting opportunity. We have another question that just came in from the audience. I guess I can throw it out here for all of you. How can you keep startups aiming for extreme scaling in Germany when the amount of money you can raise is way higher in other countries?
Honestly speaking, I think that's very difficult. Germany is in a very strong competition with, let's say, the rest of the world is competing. And actually, as a founder, you're really looking where's the right place to go. I mean, from my perspective, it was like moving from Erfurt to Leipzig. This is like a small step, but it already made a huge impact. And if you have the luck as a founder to actually identify and start a business which is, I don't know what's meant by extreme scaling, but sounds like quite a lot. And then you also have, to some extent, the obligation to find the right ecosystem to actually do what the company or what the idea allows you to do. And I think nowadays it doesn't really matter where you're based. You have to move the company to wherever you find the best conditions to grow it. So it's going to be difficult to keep those people over here.
Okay, yeah, I also think one should be a bit sort of discerning when we are using expressions like extreme scaling, because what does that actually mean? So, I mean, in my past experience, I've had the pleasure and privilege to to live and work abroad. So I was working in the UK and in Ireland for a number of years, working and running in entrepreneurship centers at universities. And when I was in the UK, I probably was in a very US-dominated environment. And I mean, this whole idea of blitz scaling and all these kind of very fashionable, let's say, buzzwords that are out there, they're very much modeled on a US-based way of growing companies. And I mean, the US is a very different environment than Germany and than Europe is. And so I was always struck when when there was this unspoken notion out there that says, do you want to be an entrepreneur or do you want to be a small business? And I'm just thinking that's just utterly and totally wrong, right? Because in Germany we have absolutely great companies that probably no one has ever heard of, who are world market leaders in certain aspects and in certain areas. And I think we should be really proud of them. And just by the fact that they probably haven't gone down the path of blitz scaling or whatever else is out there, doesn't mean that they're not successful, and doesn't mean that they're not creating value and that they're not creating jobs and that they are not creating solutions to problems in the world?
I think, I mean, the question is going to, I see it's always taking Germany as a basis, and I think the scaling, whatever it means, but if you're having a good company and you're starting right well and you're going up with your figures, then everyone is trying to give you money. So at the moment there's a lot of money around, not only in the big cities, but also in the smaller states, and a lot of international money. So if you can prove a business model that is working in Germany, and you will have some technology fields where when you proved it in Germany, then this will be your entrance to wherever in the world, because if you take medtech, biotech, telemedicine, things like this, so if it works here and it's proven, and you even get a reimbursement, then the world is open for you and the international money is coming. So it's right, we in Germany don't spend that much money in companies, but I think the money that is spent in the first or Series A or in the seed financing rounds is quite a lot. So this helps you and helps the companies to get the next steps and then to get open to international or bigger investors. So this is probably step by step.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a quite interesting discussion with a guy from Boston, and he moved over here to Leipzig and is running his company over here. And I was asking him, hey, moving from Boston to Leipzig, what's the background? And he said, hey, I've been in this US venture capital scene for a couple of years, and it's really driven by figures, by number, by growth. And what we are actually doing is what this particular person is doing is he wants to build a business by having purpose, which is a very famous wording nowadays. And he said over here in Germany, it's like, to some extent, it's more focused on the content of the business, like building some real structures, and it's not necessarily focusing on, you know, blitzscaling, however you call it. So I think it's really important, and we also have one of those questions here. There's also some things startups or founders can learn from, like being a bit more down to earth and focusing on really building substantial business.
So shall we address that question now? What can startups learn and copy from Mitteldeutschland? I guess internationally, or in other parts of Germany as well.
Everyone is laughing. I think there's what I just said. It's to some extent you need to have the core of the company, and in Mitteldeutschland, as it was just said, we have a long tradition and history, especially in industry and chemical issues. So there's a lot to learn, but what is really difficult from my point of view is to actually bridge the whole thing, like getting those traditional engineering kind of thinking and mix it up to the right extent with the growth and venture capital and startup world to actually build businesses that are substantial, which is, from my personal point of view, quite an important fact.
And I think, I mean, the good or one of the basics here in Mitteldeutschland is that is the lack of many things you have in big cities or in Western Germany, in Munich, Hamburg, Berlin. Here it's, when you have the idea, you have to fight for it. So it gives for the entrepreneur, and I think this is what we see also in our companies, in our portfolio companies, that the founders, the entrepreneurs are much more eager to get their idea developed and not to switch after a while and say, oh, I do something different because there's so much money on the street that would help me to build something new. So the people are different and the background is different. So also from, I mean, if you go 30 years back, you know, then the clash of the GDR. Industry broke down. People were running away from the cities, up to 30%. So it's just also I think, a generation thing. So for the people coming here, staying here because they want to stay here, and to make a basis for new entrepreneurship here.
And I also think that people always get mesmerized by the venture capital industry and by the fact that apparently there are these people out there who sign checks with uncountable numbers of zeros behind figures, and I just think that I think you have to demystify the venture capital industry to some extent as well, and because I mean these guys are not signing checks for free. They want something in return, and what they want in return is profit, right? And they want a return on their investment. And these returns on investment have to be absolutely extreme, right? They have to be multiples and multiples and multiples. So also, I think, before we start chasing those investors, I think it's much more prudent to focus on building a business model that actually supports you and that supports your the value proposition and the solution to the problem you want to build. And if you're really solving a problem for someone and that person is willing to pay money for it, I mean, hey, you're off to the races, right? And then it's a question of how you go on the growth trajectory. But also, caution with just looking at starry-eyed at people who or at those ideas that venture capital is the solution to everything.
Thank you, Barbara. And this sort of brings us to the next question from the audience. I think it's more for Eve, but it would be interesting to hear perspectives from all of you. Why would founders not match the profile? On the social side, maybe because it's difficult to build a team and find talent, or not enough courage to deal with the business operation challenges?
Well, this is one of the main topics always when companies or entrepreneurs are coming to us applying for money. So in the last year was about 600 applications more or less we had, or pitch decks, and we made, I think, 4 new investments. So there is a long way from sending an email and then getting the contract signed and the money. And often you have teams that are not fit, people that are not fit, that some of the competencies are missing. So of course it's kind of little helping and coaching them, but it's sometimes also difficult to find the right people, even if they're coming from the universities. Not all of them want to, even if they have good ideas, want to go to the private sector and found a company, because it's still something dangerous to take the risk, and to take the risk for having a good product, making good business. So there's one of the things that have to be done is encouraging the people to go their way. So this is something different to sometimes it's more the mental change or the problem than the business challenges. I mean, for business challenges, you always can find someone who helps you, coaches for taxation, legal, whatsoever. But the talents and the team forming and building, this is something really, really important, and is one of the basics then also for a decision for an investment.
I totally agree. I think this is one of the biggest issues or challenges we have to address over here. It's like I have 2 daughters. They are 11 and 13. And if you take a look from a founder's perspective or entrepreneur's perspective, and you take a look at how they are taught in school and about the social environment, it's for whatever reason it's part of the German culture to think in security, and if you get, if you have to pay social insurance and all this thing, that's totally fine, but encouraging them to actually try new things and start a business, even if there's a risk of failing. This is something which is unfortunately quite uncommon, and I think this is also one of the reasons why startups, or there might be quite good ideas somewhere in the, let's say, outside of bigger cities, but matching or finding the right people to build a team and saying, hey, let's do this together, and also having all the qualifications you need in order to successfully start a company. That's a really difficult thing, and this is why some Basislager, for example, it's like a huge melting pot of ideas, but and you get to know a lot of people over there. But first, you need to move over there, and you need to go there in order to actually start conversation. And
what is something probably this is probably one of the points when you're looking for investors or of investor money. Don't look just for the money, but also for the smart network the investor has, because this is something we also can provide due to the fact that we are kind of some of years in business, because this is something, just signing the check will be okay, and then after a year you have to go and ask for some more, but helping them with the network, taxation, legal problems whatsoever, and giving the idea that there is something not only giving you money, but also input and help. So smart money, at least for smart people. So this is something you always have to keep in mind, and when you are trying to not only build your team, but also to try and find an investment.
And I also think that I don't know how the rest of the panel feels about it, but when I went to school and university and I got my first sort of proper job, I mean, I was totally convinced that I would stay in this job until retirement, right? And then I had the opportunity to be in an entrepreneurial and startup environment for quite a long time, and now my outlook is extremely different. I mean, it may sound a little bit sort of, it may sound that I think there are no good choices and bad choices in life. There are just choices, and there are very, very few decisions in life that cannot be undone. So what is stopping you of trying things out, right? And you have nothing to lose. You only have things to gain. And if you realize that you don't that it may not be your cup of tea, or that that something doesn't quite feel right here, then you just stop and you do something else. And I think that's the kind of this sort of experimental mindset, this sort of trying out, testing things that is really part and parcel of the entrepreneurial mindset. And instead of just over-analyzing and thinking, what are the potential risks? What are the potential things that can possibly go wrong if I go down this route? And I'm just saying, well, just try it for a little while. Give yourself 4 weeks. Give yourself 8 weeks. And if you see that it doesn't work, then just, iterate, go somewhere else, do something else. But I mean, this idea that you're now making a decision, and that decision is going to determine your life for the next 45 years. I mean, just get over it.
4 to 8 weeks may be a bit short. There's also a question, what is actually a founder, what makes him a founder? And I think one of the important things is endurance to some extent. Yeah. But it doesn't prevent him from trying and, experimenting and getting into new things. But this is also, if I talk to my mother, she's always asking, hey, what are you actually doing there? And I say, I'm trying to do new things and get some traction over there. And she's like, hey, are you sure? Is everything fine? Are you going to get your rent and everything?
Are you going to get a pension?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So encouraging people to actually step out of this traditional thinking. There's still, over here in Germany, and this is one of the big advantages we have, there's still a very reliable net which is going to carry everything you need if something goes wrong. So just go for it.
Any thoughts on, somebody asked, what are the key qualification skills for founders? I think there are quite a few founders watching this right now, and they really want to know what it takes to get some money.
Well, there should be really professionals in what they are doing. So if they are really technical minds, then it's just great. So what are the, I mean, you shouldn't spend too much money. Should be a little bit serious in what you are doing. You should be serious in your business day-by-day life. Qualifications, I mean, you don't need a university degree. This is something I always miss a little bit in the discussion about startups, because it's mostly startups coming from universities, startups coming from Fraunhofer, from Leibniz, you just name it. But what about the other ones? You know, that just has an apprenticeship and have the idea to make something new and get not always the possibilities, opportunities to develop these ideas. So this is probably a complete different discussion, but should be done in the next also couple of months and years here, even in this region, so or everywhere else in Germany. The skills, they should be able to listen and to think. So listen to advices by business people, advices by consultants, advices by their investors, and not stay strict to the ideas if they are not going well. So this is probably a social mind should be also there in your team. It's not only looking at the figures, I would say.
I think one very important issue is focusing on the customer and focusing on getting a product up and running. And from my point of perspective, it's a bit difficult to always associate founder and getting money and getting funded. I think this entrepreneur spirit is way more important to actually identify some problem, get some customers and go for it, and not focusing on just building up something in order to get the money, but actually to solve the problem or to first identify the problem. And I think this is also to some extent a difference between thinking in Mitteldeutschland and maybe in the US. It's somehow different focus.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think, you know, a lot of entrepreneurial ventures might start with the question, this is a problem for me, hence other people in the world also have this problem. And whilst this is a good, you know, somewhat of a good premise, I would also say that if you are taking yourself too much into the center of that, then you will not succeed, because I think you ultimately, you know, you're going down the entrepreneurial route because you're solving a problem for someone else, and you need to understand that someone else really pretty well in order to build something that is sustainable and that is growing. And so I would say yes. Customer focus, whatever the customer wants, you have to give it to him. So if the customer wants it in strawberry and you say, well, I only got it in chocolate because chocolate is so much nicer, and the customer still says I want it in strawberry, then you think you have to produce it in strawberry, because otherwise the customer is not going to want it. So I think this idea of like taking yourself and taking occasionally your ego out of the equation and just saying this is all about satisfying customer needs, then I think that's a very good quality. But also I would say persistence, the idea that you are able to deal with degrees of ambiguity, uncertainty, that you are that you're able to listen, that you're able to take on advice, and be open-minded and saying, is there a better way to do this? Right? Is there something that that can be done better and more efficient?
I mean, this is something both of you said. I mean, take your product, or when you are doing the product, go straight to the customer and try it, and don't think it's a fault by you if you have to change something because the customer wants something different, or there are new ideas with your companies or with your customers. So also to go back, as you said, go back one step behind your product or your business, and then just try to do what the customer wants you to do, and that's probably the best way to sell it sometime.
And I think, you know, we're in many respects we're also doing ourselves somewhat of a disservice by, you know, portraying these successful entrepreneurs as these kind of rock stars and superheroes. So we put them on a pedestal, and we are somehow extrapolating from their kind of personality and ways of seeing the world to yourself, and maybe you know, people come to the conclusion and say, well, I'm not like that person, hence I will never be able to do this. And that's just not true. I mean, it's, you know, there's a lot, yes, there's a lot of assumptions around how you have to be as an entrepreneur. And I think, you know, completely scrap that. I mean, you will find your way based on the skill set and based on the personality that you are. And whatever else is lacking, you have to be open-minded enough to say, I am lacking this quality, I'm lacking the skills, hence I have to find people who have this skill and who have this quality and have to build a team around that.
Thank you. So this segues into the next question from the audience. How do you find the interesting problems or the relevant problems to address with your startup? Which brings me to a more, I guess, regional focus question, which would be, what kinds of industries is the region prioritizing right now or looking to attract, or what kinds of services?
Well, for Saxony-Anhalt, I can say that for our business there is that we are open to all branches as long as there's a technology part in it, and a huge technology part in it, because we're not in the position to choose and to say we are just only doing fintech or something like this. So we are wide open, and this, I think, has a lot of opportunities. So that for the students or for the entrepreneurs, they can stay in their surroundings or neighborhood or whatsoever, and they find some partners just around the corner. So this is probably a good thing. And to find finding the problems, it's mostly the everyday life. It's, I think, even though it's sometimes their own experiences they did, so mainly in the medtech and biotech area that they're studying, where are my problems or problems we have to face in the family or whatsoever, taking this as a point to try to do something new. And of course, the founders see it in their everyday life, where we can have digitalization of railroads also, to bring it then into new ideas and products and companies.
I think if you consider yourself to be a founder or entrepreneur, then and you don't have the idea yet, I think the biggest chance of finding a valid idea is actually approaching places where there are people who might have the idea, like just said it, Fraunhofer or any startup gathering point, I would say, like you find in bigger cities, and actually talk to people. And I think the chance is quite high that there's someone out there who is having a good idea and who's knowing the market and the customer, but he might not have yet the team to actually start the whole thing. And putting these two things together is maybe the highest chance of starting something. You shouldn't do it just for, I want to have a startup, so I'm going to start something and just go for it. That's a bit difficult because inventing a problem just to solve it, I don't know if this is going to work.
I mean, the good thing is there's a lot of organizations, networks here in Mitteldeutschland, but everywhere else in Germany too. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you are looking for an idea or a problem, then you can just join one of these networks, be it XR, be it medtech, be it engineering. So meetex, tech meetups that are done monthly. So you can just go there and get acquainted to the people and get connected, and maybe you find your team and entrepreneurs, and then you can team up and start creating the idea and building up a company.
I think it's always so. When I was giving classes on entrepreneurship, and people always say, "Yeah, but I don't have an idea. How can I get an idea?" And then I said, "Well, it always starts with a problem. You have to find a problem that is big enough and that is interesting enough for you as well, that you really want to solve it." Right, and that really then starts with kind of also questioning yourself and saying like, okay, so what does interest me? What kind of sectors do I find interesting? What kind of environments do I find interesting? And then literally go out there and we basically send people out there and for problem spotting. Yeah, so we went on problem spotting excursions, and we put them into nurseries, and we put them into hospitals, and we put them into schools, and we put them into cafeterias, and we were basically just encourage them to talk to the people who work there, you know, behind the counter or just in their daily jobs, and we were saying, please. Would you mind giving us half an hour or an hour of your time and just talk about your work and talk about what are the biggest challenges and what are the biggest obstacles that you're currently facing in your day-to-day work, and why? And why is there a solution out there? And if there's not a solution, well, that's where you should be starting to investigate. And if this is really something that interests you as well, because it has to. I mean, it's really hard to build a company around something that isn't really interesting for you. So then I think this is a really good way to start. Just go problem spotting.
Thank you. Next question. What is the best way for founders to experiment and learn about deep tech? Are there opportunities outside of university? Maybe, Stefan, we can start with you, and you can tell us a little bit about your journey from manufacturing to digitalization. I think this may be something that a lot of companies in this region are, having to deal with right now.
Okay. I founded a company in 2008 back in Jena, and it was originally electronics engineering company, and over the years we evolved to manufacturing company, but we never had our own manufacturing in terms of having machines and having a whole factory, but we always used external suppliers. And we had some sort of a internal software which we used to basically organize the whole supply chain flow. And during the last 2 years, quite some of our customers, they realized, hey, the world is changing. Even in B2B industrial world, the product life cycles are shortening quite a lot. So many industrial companies run into problems that they have a too long time to market, and they approached us and asked us, hey, how are you organizing the whole thing? And we said, hey, we're doing this a couple of years, and we are using some piece of software to actually do so, and this is how we actually spin off the new company from the existing one and say, hey, this piece of software should be developed into something that the customer can use on its own in order to organize his supply chain with the manufacturing. So coming back to the question, it's basically experimenting, and it's not, I would not call it deep tech what we are doing. It's more into process managing, process mining, and supply chain operation, but this is still something, as we said in the beginning, Germany is very, very deeply rooted into industrial manufacturing. So there's a lot of potential over there, and there are a lot of companies starting to digitalize the whole thing and make it more efficient. So my advice for founders, if you want to experiment, then it sounds pretty easy, but just do it, go for it. But outside universities, deep tech, I mean, it depends on how you define the whole thing. If you need a proper lab with a lot of equipment, then it's going to be hard to actually find some space or location to actually do it. But this is why there are some basic funding from the government to dig into the really difficult issues.
I mean, for software development and artificial intelligence and variant management and so on, it's probably that you just, I mean, here around you can go to the suppliers for the automotive industry to find ideas and learn about it and maybe experiment to see what's going on in this technology development, and where you can see that the old school automotive industry, German automotive industry, wants to be now some electricity, mobility, software company and not longer an automotive company. So if you are interested in this kind of deep tech for software technology, then just go there and try to find a job there to see what's going on there. And otherwise, go to all these research facilities and institutions we have that are dealing with these topics. And there are many, many of it here in the region.
If you're looking for a job, like being an employee, that's totally fine. But if you're a startup, then it's going to be very, very hard to approach a German automotive manufacturer and say, hey, what are your problems? Could we help you solve this? So this is, I think it's not going to work. Yeah. One thing, there was a question on what a founder could do, and I think one thing which I'm missing is some sort of mentorship in Germany. It's like if you're approaching a very famous industrial company and you ask the CEO, hey, I have a startup, could you please have, let's say, one dinner with me once a quarter or something like this, and just give me some background of what you're doing and how you're doing, maybe give you some advice. It's really difficult to find people which are open to actually share their knowledge, and this is something from my perspective is quite different to the US approach, where there is like encouraging and people having success. They are like, from my perspective, they are more open to share how they do it and why they do it. And over here in Germany, to some extent, it is a bit, hey, it's mine. This is how I built the whole thing, and I don't want to share the knowledge. And this is, to some extent, it's a bit, it's a problem.
Well, I mean, I love that one of the questions is like how to go problem spotting, and I think maybe it's we're so trimmed on always finding solutions, but I think it's much more interesting to find actually problems rather than solutions. And quite frankly, I mean, if you are going out there, people love talking about their problems and about their frustrations, right? So if you go out and if you go into a coffee shop, or if you go into an environment, even if you go into a meetup and so on, yes, of course it requires a certain amount of, I have to step out of my comfort zone because I have to talk to people about their problems. But the first 2 times might be hard, and then the 3rd time it will become better. You will become better at this. And the first time I did this, it was totally weird. And but as I said, people love to have conversations, and people love having conversation about the things that are currently doesn't work in their lives, and where they are facing challenges in their job, either privately or professionally, wherever this might be. So I think it's always a question of being prepared to have that sort of conversation, and to always ask, like, so why is this a problem for you? Why is this particularly hard? Why do you find this frustrating? Why is this? What are you doing right now in order to solve that problem? Are you satisfied with that solution? Could there be a better solution for that? These are the kinds of questions that you can use in order to kind of circle the problem and to just go and identify those.
I mean, one of the examples would be the University of Magdeburg is putting some of their students into hospitals, into operational rooms. They just stand at the wall and have a look at what's going on there. And after that, there's a conversation with the people and talking about why did you did, why this way and why not this, and it looks so difficult. Is there no other solutions? And out of these spotting, more or less, some really good products and ideas developed, evolved, and even get funded. So, I mean, this is just the first step, but it's mostly the easiest way, just to go with your students, or when you have the possibility, of course, as a single person, you're not quite happy and allowed in the hospital to see what's going on there. But if there are these corporations and you have the chance, then just go to these spots where you are interested in, and then look what's going on there.
So we had the student startup in Oxford that actually came up with a really ingenious idea where. And it developed like that. They were basically sitting in hospitals and they were watching people, like in the normal hospital routine, you know, people on corridors, people like patients being wheeled back and forth. And out of that, they realized that there are actually quite a lot of doors in a hospital that you need to open and close in order to get through them. And then they were having conversations about people with people and saying, like, okay, so, you know, they know that hospital-acquired infections, and especially MRSA infections, are a really, really big problem in the hospital environment. And at the moment, they are trying to get on top of that by implementing a very stringent hand-washing routine. But the observation is also that people might become a little bit, you know, not so stringent about their hand-washing routine and disinfection and so on and so forth. And so their idea was actually to integrate something that when you press the door handle, that actually it sprays some disinfectant over your hands. I mean, that was a while ago, so it was a year ago. So there might be different solutions out there right now. But this is for me, this is a really good example of saying, yes, they were really literally sitting on the corridor in a hospital watching people go in and out. And then they were starting to count how many doors are there in a hospital. And they actually came to the conclusion there are quite a lot of doors in a hospital that you could kit out with a door handle like that. So it's for me, it's just really that sort of open mindset that really problems are everywhere. You really, I mean, they're for you to seize and for you to identify.
Thank you. Have you actually, this is for all of you guys, have you noticed a change in the mentality in Germany in terms of entrepreneurship, taking risks, in light of the corona crisis at all?
Well, we see that there are less applications. So I think for people having jobs, stay with their jobs. And it's not that they just want to make the risk to do something new. So this is an experience I made. Also for people from universities, they stay at the university with some of their jobs and go not into their business. So I would say there's something like this. But of course you will have, on the other side, you have companies and ideas that spread out or caused by the pandemic because to try to tackle the problems dealing with the pandemic. So there is, for new ideas, it's just a boost. Some of the companies and entrepreneurs, but for some, it's a little bit of getting on the brakes and just wait up how it will develop in the next couple of months, hopefully, and then there will hopefully a new boost of companies and ideas at the end of the year or in autumn.
No, go ahead.
Well, we are in the industrial space, so what we realized, we founded the company just weeks before the pandemic hit. So what helped us quite a lot is that the whole affinity or openness to digital communications like video calls and this kind of things, it increased, or it was forced to increase quite a lot. So if you would have approached, let's say, the average industrial company in Germany 5 years ago and wanted to have a video call with them, it's pretty likely that they would not go for it. And nowadays it's quite common. I mean, it's part of the working at home setting that we all have been forced in. So to some extent it was a push in terms of digitalization. But still on the employer side, or let's say in the entrepreneur side, it's completely right that it's to some extent harder to convince people to leave their perceived secure jobs and go for or to enter a startup. And this is also going back to this mentality kind of thing that your parents tell you, hey, if you have a job, keep it and stay on the safe side.
Well, I mean, you know, with every crisis, crisis always brings lots of opportunity, but also crisis brings out a sense of, well, let's button down the hatches and let's stay safe for the moment, and especially in a obviously in a public health crisis as we've just experienced or still experiencing. But I also think it's absolutely amazing what came out of this crisis. I mean, we have suddenly seen, new drug approval processes in months instead of years. I mean, this is something that we, especially in the agency space, where we're really dealing with lots of deep tech innovations and where regulations and red tape is always a problem. I mean, I hope some of that stays. I really do, because the fact that we could get new vaccines approved within 3 months, I mean, that's just amazing. Normally it takes, years and years and years of approval processes. And also what happened in terms of people willing to suddenly try out new things, or to what it has done for how shops have invented themselves in terms of delivery mechanisms and things like that. I think that's truly, that's truly very positive, and I hope some of that will stay, and that we're not reverting back to some sort of prior model. But yeah, of course, it also brings this sense of, no, I stay safe for the moment because I don't know what's out there. I think both of it. I think it's sides of the same coin, but I still think it has provided a space for experimentation and for openness to try out new things as well, and to see that things can be successful, that you can actually, that new things can come about even in a public health crisis like that are positive.
But a fun fact is, when you're not trying to create an own company, but you just want to choose or to change your company as an employment, then it seems for some of the company easier to find people, because all these mobile home office, home working gives the employees the chance to think over, and there are many of them are open for new jobs. So this is also, we see it in our portfolio companies, that it's even if you find or try to find specialists in software development, it's easier to approach people nowadays, because the binding to the company. So this was one of the facts, some questions before, the social, the team up, getting together as a team. This is a little bit flattering. So this is also an opportunity to find new people then for existing companies. Not for new ones, but mostly for existing companies.
Another question, what is the average time, probably years, that you have seen from a tech company to get relevant sales or to meet your expectations at the time of investment?
Well, it depends probably what you, how you define relevant sales. So if it's the first sales, or is it the break even? Is it the MVP that shows it's working? So for us, it would be to stay more or less in the financial planning we had to discuss, and that was our basis for the investment. So this would be the first step. So it can take months, but it can also take years to get a break even, just depending on the kind of product you have. So if you have in software development, then probably the first MVPs will be on the market in some months, but the product, the final product, it will take a bit longer. But if you're investing like we do in biotech, then you're not talking about months. So that's why, as long as you stay with your plans and the basic idea, the pitch you made to the potential investor, and you stay to the development and the project planning more or less, then it's probably the best thing for you as a company and for the investment that was made by your investors.
I think maybe this question might be addressing more the investor, but from a real life experience, I founded the company in 2008, and it took me 1 month to get the first VC money in the company, and we didn't have any turnover at all, and it was a long way down the road of development to actually get to sales. And the company that I'm started 1.5 years ago, we are doing substantial turnover, and to some extent it is I want to stay in this bootstrapping mode for a couple of months more, but actually the investor is basically, from my perspective, looking at what is on the horizon, where is this company going to, and if you have the chance to actually get to the point that you have substantial sales without getting an investor on board, then this should be your path, because of course at the end of the discussion with the investor, you have the valuation issue, and then if you have the product sales funnel proven and you can say, hey, I can manufacture or deliver the whole thing, then of course this will push your valuation of the company quite a lot. So it will take years to really get to substantial sales, and if you can manage to do it in a bootstrap way, then you should do it. But there are quite many businesses where you need initial funding to actually do the whole thing, and then it's, from my point of view, it's a matter of how to present and how to build your pitch deck in order to convince the investors. And one of the main questions they might ask is, okay, is the idea real? Is the problem you're solving actually leading into sales, into money? But the second, we already had this discussion, the most important thing is, does the investor believe that you actually can do it, that you can operate the whole thing in a way? The likelihood is quite given that it will succeed. So I think it's not a matter of time, but convincing the investor.
Yeah, I don't think there is a standard answer for that. It always depends on the environment you're in. It depends on the sector you're in. It depends on your proposition. It depends on the type of problem that you're also tackling. So I don't think there is the one answer out there. It also depends on your growth appetite, right? I mean, there are people who might be happier to take things slowly in the beginning and to just grow organically, and to build up a certain amount of traction before they even go and look out for outside investment. Some companies will never ever take outside investment, which is also a path that you can take. So it's I think it depends as much on yourself. It depends on the sector you're in, and it depends on the type of business you want to build.
So we have about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna group 2 questions into one now. How can a government stimulate founding? Is Germany doing enough, in your opinion? And what are some advantages to starting your own business in Germany as opposed to other countries?
My radical proposition would be that there should be a compulsory start your own business for a month or for 2 months type of course for every politician in government. You know, put them out there and say, okay, you have to start a business now, go for it, and just give them the experience of what it is like.
Fill that form and go for it.
What?
Fill that particular form and found the company, do it.
Genau. And then let them grapple with the type of bureaucracy and the type of red tape that you have to deal with. So that would be my very, very radical approach to things. I don't know how open they are to that, but we can keep dreaming, can we?
I think back to the question. I mean, I think there's enough money. Public money in going into incubators, universities, co-working spaces, you just name it, associations, networks. So there's a lot of money around, even in small states like Saxony-Anhalt. So spend 20 million, million euros. So it's not the money you spend. The question is, what do you do with the money and what is the outcome? And then we're a little bit back to bureaucracy. If you see, well, you get this amount of money, but you don't have to prove in a quality or quantity way that you spend it right, then it's difficult, I would say, just to say I make 2 meetings or something like this is not a quality thing for getting a huge amount of money for doing this. So, I mean, there is a lot of money, but they need some more, I would say not reorganization, but just to watch and have a look at what, as in a company, you know, you spend a lot of money and then you have to look back and what did you reach with the money? What effects did you brought into the region? What are the effects in people, in companies, in turnover, in tax, whatsoever? And this is something missing.
I think, sorry, I'm always struck by the fact that, you know, there's so much money going into all sorts of innovation initiatives. But if you really truly understand the nature of innovation, it is inherently uncertain and it is unpredictable, and you have to adapt as you go along. But a lot of innovation funding schemes that are out there, they basically ask you to forecast how many pencils are you going to buy in year 4. And I mean, that's just ludicrous because you don't even know whether the thing that you're building is ever going to fly. So rather than trying to de-risk public money being wasted, you're pressing things into a mold that is absolutely not suitable, and that is just not going to work. Not with deep tech innovation anyway.
Thank you. So, continuing with this topic, German law/bureaucracy can be quite difficult. Is there a way for founders to get help to navigate that? How did you do it, Stefan? Tell us.
Mentorship is a quite important fact from my point of view. So if you have the chance to talk to other founders, normally they will be quite open to tell you how to navigate. Of course, you need lawyer, you need tax advice and all these kind of things. But from my point of view, this bureaucracy kind of thing is the most difficult trade-off to have. Like you don't want to give too much money to anyone just, you know, to spend it, but you need to some extent also have some sort of filter or you need to know what has been done with the money, especially if it's publicly funded or public money. That's quite difficult. But if you could reduce the number of forms you need to fill and all this kind of thing, then this would certainly help.
The good thing about us as investors is that we have our own legal department, and I know that one of these sessions was about standardized contracts and laws and so on. And this is something that helps the companies, because there are so many lawyers around wanting to make a lot of money out of the entrepreneurs and getting a part of the investment sum. So therefore, it's always good to have a kind of standardization, even if there's a lot to do in the individual case and to adapt to the profile of the company. But it helps a lot.
What would your number one tip for a founder be? If you had one tip to give.
Do it. Start the company. It's going to be a very, very interesting and good experience. It's going to be some sweat. It's going to be tough and difficult, but you will get to know a lot of people, interesting people that will help you, and it's also going to be fun to some extent. There are some days where you need to search these moments, but they are existing. So I would like to encourage everyone to actually start something.
Find a problem that is worth solving and solve it. But there are different ways how you can get on that trajectory. I mean, you can always start, on the easy way of just doing things on the side and then doing things on the weekend. And if you're really passionate about this thing and you really want to find a solution to a problem, I mean, it's not this kind of. It doesn't have to start always on this. You put yourself out there on wholly and from day one. You can also start like slowly. You can do it. You can do it day by day. And if you then think that you can take the plunge and take the jump, then you at least have done some work in order to investigate and to actually come to grips with the problem beforehand. So it's not about, oh yes, I'm going to now find a problem and I'm going to solve it and build a company. Just start slowly, take your time, do your interviews, do your investigations, and do it on the weekends, do it in the evenings, and start slowly to build up that confidence and to build up that knowledge that you need in order to then take that step and say, I'm going to start this now because I'm sure that this is something I want to do.
I mean, besides tip one, go for it, is tip number two. If you're located or want to move to Saxony-Anhalt, just give me a mail. Send me a mail.
And there's, from my point of view, a tip number three is gather the right people around you. Get in very close relation with people that are open-minded, that are looking forward, that want to build some new business ideas, and to some extent ignore people that try to push you down and slow you down. So
maybe to wrap up this part and segue into the next session in Safari, which is about internationalization of the startup scene. Stefan, can you tell us a little bit about your experience having an office in Hong Kong?
Yeah, in my last company, we had an office in Hong Kong, mainly with the purpose of setting up manufacturing capacity somewhere in Asia, and Hong Kong was the gate to go for. To be honest, we closed it down again because we are now we now believe that organizing supply chains locally is right now the better idea, and this idea came to our mind before the pandemic hit, so there's something about it. But still, Hong Kong and Asia, one of the big advantages they have is they're really open-minded, they are forward-looking, and they have a pace which is really hard to find in Germany and really hard to compete. So if you have the chance to do business with people from Asia, you need to be very fast and you need to be, to some extent, aggressive, which is good, which helps also to shift your mind to some extent and even have an advantage in doing business over here in Europe. So you should do it if you have the chance to cooperate or get some investment from there.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your very interesting perspectives. Thank you to the audience for sending so many questions and making my job super easy as moderator. I really enjoyed it. We are going to have a story about this on lifeglow.com in the coming weeks, so you can check out the web magazine. And enjoy the rest of Safari. Thank you.